Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. Today, we're going to go into the book of First Maccabees, the 7th chapter. In the 150th year, Demetrius, the son of Seleucus, departed from Rome and came up with a few men onto a city of the seacoast. Now, let's take a look here at Demetrius. Let's do First Maccabees. Yeah, Demetrius the first soldier. So let's read a little bit about him. Because now keep in mind, it says here that he departed from Rome, right? And he was there because he was a hostage there. And he was a hostage there going back to the Treaty of Apamea, and I think it's mentioned in here. So it says here, Demetrius the first soldier reigned as king of the Hellenistic Seleucid Empire from November 162 to June 150. Demetrius grew up in Rome as a hostage, but returned to Greek Syria and overthrew his young cousin Antiochus V, Eupator, and regent Lysias. Demetrius took control during a turbulent time of the empire and spent much of his time fighting off revolts and challenges to his power from threats such as Timarchus and Alexander Ballas. So basically, you had starting with where Antiochus was. Antiochus, who was a hostage at Rome, because his Antiochus IV Epiphanes was a hostage at Rome, going back to an agreement that happened, right? His father, Antiochus III the Great, got into it, right? And we covered that in the first few chapters. But he got into it with Rome, okay? And he ended up losing to Rome. And he signed, they made a peace treaty known as the Treaty of Apamea. A part of the requirements of that was he had to deliver hostages to Rome, and they included his son. So Antiochus III ended up with one of his sons being Seleucus IV Philopator, and another one of his sons being Antiochus Epiphanes. He sent Antiochus Epiphanes as the hostage. So Epiphanes was a hostage at Rome for a period of time, while his brother Seleucus Philopator was reigning as king of the Seleucid Empire. It was during that time that he sent Heliodorus, right, to come to the temple to try and gain all the riches from it. He ended up getting beat by the angels and so on. We'll cover that as we go through it. Now, the son of Seleucus IV Philopator, who was ruling, right, the one who sent Heliodorus, one of his sons is this Demetrius the first soldier. So you'll see here, looking at Demetrius, if you look at his father, it tells you Seleucus on the right side here. Seleucus the fourth Philopator. Okay. Now, when Antiochus Epiphanes, which was the brother of Seleucus Philopator, when he finally was escaped from being a hostage, he came to Syria. And at the time, I believe it was Seleucus's son, okay, who was basically like the heir to the throne at the time. Antiochus came in there. Oh, he said, "Oh, that's my nephew, right? It's my brother's son. I'm gonna take good care of him," and so on. Came up in there and ended up having the son killed, and then he usurped the throne, and that's how he ended up reigning over there for that period of time. So now, dealing with Demetrius comes back after escaping from Rome. He was a hostage there because really he would have been, he's closer to the throne as the heir, being that his father was a previous king than Antiochus. But right now, with where we are in the book of Maccabees, Antiochus Epiphanes is dead after usurping the throne. His son, Antiochus V, is currently reigning. Demetrius now has left Rome and he has come over there. And he's like, well, Antiochus and Antiochus' son that's currently reigning right now, which would be his cousin, right? Because it would be his uncle's son. He's currently reigning right now, and Demetrius ends up basically taking that over. So that's what this first paragraph says. Okay, that when it says here, but returned to Greek Syria and overthrew his young cousin Antiochus V Eupator. That's the relationship there. Okay, that's how it ends up being, or that's why that's his cousin. Okay, um, let's read a little bit here. So it says Demetrius was born around 185 BC. He was sent to Rome as a hostage at a young age during the reign of his father Seleucus IV Philopator and his mother Laodice IV. Rome, taking prominent Seleucid family members hostage, was one of the terms of the Treaty of Apamea that had ended the Roman-Seleucid War. His father was likely murdered by his finance minister Heliodorus. So Heliodorus got his ass beat by the angels, came back, murdered or assassinated Seleucus, and that's how we ended up here. It says here his uncle Antiochus IV Epiphanes, uncle of Demetrius, overthrew Heliodorus and took the throne himself. While the throne should have gone to Demetrius, he was both too young and also still held as a hostage in Rome. Antiochus IV died around October to November 164 BC while on campaign in Babylonia and Persia. Now, they didn't mention in here, but Seleucus Philopator, if we click on him here, you'll see his issue. He had Antiochus and then Demetrius the first Soter and then Laodice. Okay, so they didn't mention it in there, but it wasn't just that Antiochus Epiphanes came and just ousted Heliodorus and then just took the throne. He also feigned himself to be taking care of his nephew, all right, which is this guy right here, Antiochus, the young one. Let's see what it says here. So let's read a little bit about him. It says Antiochus's year of birth is not specified by ancient historians, but his portrait known from his coins indicate that he was approximately 5 years old when he assumed the throne in 175 BC. He was the younger son of King Seleucus IV and his wife Laodice IV. The empire was obligated by the 188 BC Treaty of Apamea, signed after King Antiochus III lost a war against the Romans, to send a hostage to Rome. At first, Antiochus's uncle, Antiochus IV, so this Antiochus here is the son of Seleucus IV. Okay, so his uncle, Antiochus IV, Epiphanes, the wicked demon, was sent as a hostage. After Antiochus III's death in 187 BC, Seleucus IV replaced his brother, Antiochus IV, with his own eldest son and heir, Demetrius I. That's the Demetrius we're reading about now. That's why he ended up a hostage over at Rome. Since Rome considered it important that a son of the reigning king be hostage. So this is how Antiochus Epiphanes got his freedom, and this is how Demetrius ended up a hostage at Rome. The exchange took place before 178 BC. The death of Seleucus IV in 175 and the presence of Demetrius I in Rome led to the young Antiochus's proclamation as king. But the minister Heliodorus, who probably killed Seleucus IV, held the real power. Antiochus IV Epiphanes, right, soon arrived in Syria and proclaimed himself a co-ruler in a succession that was illegal because he wasn't the rightful heir. Antiochus IV disposed of Heliodorus and kept his nephew in the shadow. The young Antiochus died, which being the boy here, the actual king, died in 170/169, possibly on the orders of Antiochus IV, Epiphanes. So he came in there, oh, that's my nephew, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, and then we killed him, and then usurped the throne. So let's go back to Demetrius, and Where we at? All right, let's read this first paragraph here. So, continuing, it says here, Rome taking prominent Seleucid. I think we read that. All right, so it says his father was likely murdered by his finance minister Heliodorus in 175 BC. His uncle Antiochus IV Epiphanes overthrew Heliodorus and took the throne himself. While the throne should have gone to Demetrius, he was both too young and still held as a hostage in Rome. Antiochus IV died around October to November 164 while on campaign in Babylonia and Persia. We read about that. His 9-year-old son, Antiochus V, Eupator, became king. He's the one who went and gave his oath. We just read that to Jerusalem, and then he broke that. It says, although real power rested with Lysias, the regent Antiochus IV had left in Antioch. Demetrius, 22 years old, then requested the Roman Senate to restore the Seleucid throne to him, but was rejected, since the Romans wanted a weak Seleucid empire, and therefore preferred a boy king to a man. So they said, no, we're good. We're keeping Antiochus IV's son on there because he's a boy. We'll keep him there. You might be trouble. 2 years later, Antiochus V was greatly weakened. Rome had sent an emissary to sink his ships and hamstring his elephants, according to the terms of the Treaty of Apamea, because he couldn't get they couldn't have too much artillery, lest they become another problem. Demetrius again petitioned the Senate on the grounds that his captivity would do little to inspire Antiochus V to heed Rome. Meaning, look, the longer I'm held captive here, the less likely he'll take heed to whatever it is you're saying. But the appeal was again unsuccessful, as Rome preferred the perceived weak boy king over him. With the help of the Greek historian Polybius, Demetrius escaped from confinement and made his way to the Seleucid capital Antioch. There he successfully gained the support of the local aristocracy and took the Seleucid throne from his cousin in around November 162 BC. He immediately executed Antiochus V and Lysias. So when we go back to 1 Maccabees Chapter 7, now you know who this Demetrius is, who had departed from Rome, as it says here. So continuing in verse 2, it says, and as he entered into the palace of his ancestors, so it was, that is the Seleucid dynasty, so it was that his forces had taken Antiochus and Lysias to bring them onto him. So they had captured them, like we just read. Wherefore when he knew it, he said, let me not see their faces. So I don't even want to see their face. So his host, his army, slew them. Now when Demetrius was set up upon the throne of his kingdom, see, so we just read that in the secular history, right? Demetrius had his cousin and Lysias slain, and now he was basically the king of the Seleucid dynasty or empire at this point. There came unto him all the wicked and ungodly men of Israel, having Alcimus, who was desirous to be high priest for their captain. So always wicked ninjas in Israel. And they accused the people to the king, saying, Judas and his brethren have slain all thy friends, and driven us out of our own land. Now therefore send some man whom thou trustest, and let him go and see what havoc he hath made among us, and in the king's land, and let him punish them with all them that aid them. So basically they came and painted an evil picture of Judas and his men and said, look, we need your help. Send somebody that can come and, put an end to this and stop them, and they're causing trouble and so on. Then the king chose Bacchides, a friend of the king, who ruled beyond the flood, i.e. beyond the Euphrates on the east of it, and was a great man in the kingdom and faithful to the king. And him he sent with that wicked Alcimus, whom he made high priest, and commanded that he should take vengeance of the children of Israel. So this guy went there all because he wanted that power. He wanted that position. He went and procured an army unto himself, and got this position. So they departed and came with a great power into the land of Judea, where they sent messengers to Judas and his brethren with peaceable words deceitfully. But they gave no heed to their words, for they saw that they were come with a great power. So Judas and his brethren were like, they didn't fall for it because they're like, bruh, you got a large ass army and you're acting like you're here for peace. Then did there assemble unto Alcimus and Bacchides a company of scribes to require justice. So you had Israelites that came there basically to try and uh uh you know talk about some terms and conditions to try and seek peace. Now the Assyrians were the first among the children of Israel that sought peace of them. For they said, "Oh, one that is a priest of the seed of Aaron is come with this army. He will do us no wrong." Mhm. So he spake unto them peaceably and sware unto them, saying, we will procure the harm neither of you nor your friends. And in other words, they're not going to hurt anybody. They're here to bring peace and so on, which is all lies. Whereupon they believed him. Howbeit he took of them 60 men, the 60 men, and slew them in one day, according to the words which he wrote. And this is quoting a precept, right? According to the words which he wrote, the flesh of thy saints have they cast out, and their blood have they shed round about, or round about Jerusalem, and there was none to bury them. Salakia. Let me grab this real quick. Yeah, and that precept is referring here to the book of Psalms. It's a precept in the book of Psalms. Let's get that real quick. I believe it's Psalms. Is it 79? Psalms 79. Right, Psalm 79 and 2. The dead bodies of thy servants have they given to be meat unto the fowls of the heaven, the flesh of thy saints unto the beasts of the earth. Their blood have they shed like water round about Jerusalem, and there was none to bury them. And that's what was being quoted here in First Maccabees 7 and 17, right? The flesh of thy saints have they cast out, and their blood have they shed round about Jerusalem, and there was none to bury them. Wherefore the fear and dread of them fell upon all the people, who said, there is neither truth nor righteousness in them, for they have broken the covenant and oath that they made. So the Israelites that went and try to make peace with Alcimus quickly realized that he was clearly deceiving them. Okay. After this, removed Bacchides from Jerusalem and pitched his tents in Bezeth, where he sent and took many of the men that had forsaken him, those that deserted him, and certain of the people also. And when he had slain them, he cast them into the great pit. Then committed he the country to Alcimus, and left with him a power to aid him. So Bacchides went to the king. So he basically, in his mind, he's like, all right, I left you an army. I've already, I've put the fear and the presence in the people. So you're good. All right, if you need anything, here's some troops for you. You all right? You all set? But Alcimus contended for the high high priesthood, and unto him resorted all such as troubled the people, who, after they had gotten the land of Judah into their power, did much hurt in Israel. So basically, he was a wicked individual. He wanted the position of high priest, and all the sons of Belial, the wicked people, joined themselves onto him. And once they had control in Judah, they started to do a lot of damage, a lot of wickedness. Now, when Judas saw all the mischief that Alcimus and his company had done among the Israelites, even above the heathen, he went out onto all the coasts of Judea round about, and took vengeance of them that had revolted from him, so that they durst no more go forth into the country. So he basically whooped their ass. He cooked them to the point where they were like, because remember, he set up all these areas right after defeating the heathen armies that were round about and bringing peace to Jake that were dwelling in these areas. And now they basically turned around and started following the ways of Alcimus in wickedness. Verse 25. On the other side, when Alcimus saw that Judas and his company had gotten the upper hand and knew that he was not able to abide their force, he went again to the king and said all the worst of them that he could. So he went right back to the king, Demetrius. He saw these people, they're this and they're that and they did and that and that and that and that. Then the king sent Nicanor, one of his honorable princes, a man that bare deadly hate unto Israel, with commandments to destroy the people. So Nicanor came to Jerusalem with a great force, that is a great army, and sent unto Judas and his brethren deceitfully with friendly words, saying, let there be no battle between me and you. I will come with a few men, that I may see you in peace. So he basically tried to deceive Judas, and to get him to let his guard down, right? Saying, look, let's meet up. It's no problem, no beef. I'll bring only a few men so you can see that I'm not coming to spark any war or anything like that. He came therefore to Judas, and they saluted one another peaceably. Howbeit the enemies were prepared to take away Judas by violence. Which thing, when it was known to Judas, to wit, that he came unto him with deceit, he was sore afraid of him, and would see his face no more. So once Judas caught word that this was really this guy's plan and he was being deceitful, he basically was afraid, but more in the sense of like very wary of the guy, of Nicanor. And he basically was like, yeah, nah, we're not cool, we're not meeting anymore, none of that. Nicanor also, when he saw that his counsel was discovered, went out to fight against Judas beside Kafar Salama, where there were slain of Nicanor's side about 5,000 men, so he lost, and the rest fled into the city of David. After this, Nicanor went up to Mount Zion, and there came out of the sanctuary certain of the priests and certain of the elders of the people to salute him peaceably and to shew him the burnt sacrifice that was offered for the king. So they're like, they're trying to show him like, look, we're offering sacrifices for the king, so things can go well with him, his kingdom can be good. Nicanor is like, bruh, you think I'd give a damn? But he mocked them and laughed at them and abused them shamefully and spake proudly and swear in his wrath, saying, unless Judas and his host be now delivered into mine hands, if I ever come again in safety, you better hope I don't come back in one piece. Because if I come back here again, I will burn up this house. And with that, he went out in a great rage. Then the priest entered in and stood before the altar and the temple, weeping and saying, Thou, O Lord, didst choose this house to be called by thy name, and to be a house of prayer and petition for thy people. Be avenged of this man and his host, and let them fall by the sword. Remember their blasphemies, and suffer them not to continue any longer. So Nicanor went out of Jerusalem and pitched his tents in Beth Horon, where an host out of Syria met him. But Judas pitched in Adasa with 3,000 men, and there he prayed, saying, O Lord, when they that were sent from the king of the Assyrians blasphemed, thine angel went out and smote 185,000 of them. That's 185,000. And he's referring to when Sennacherib sent his men to go and basically, disrespect Israel and the Most High. And then when they try to come and take Jerusalem, the Lord sent that angel and smote his men. Even so, destroy thou this host before us this day. So just like you did back then, when they reproached you and reproached Israel, do likewise now, that the rest may know that he hath spoken blasphemously against thy sanctuary, and judge thou him according to his wickedness. So let it be known, so people know what happens when they disrespect your sanctuary, they disrespect you. So the 13th day of the month Adar, the host joined battle, but Nicanor's host was discomfited, and he himself was first slain in the battle. Now when Nicanor's host saw that he was slain, they cast away their weapons and fled. Then they pursued after them a day's journey. That's Judas and his army, from Adasa on to Gazara, sounding an alarm after them with their trumpets. So they chased down the armies, the men that were fleeing or from Nicanor's side, sounding alarms, trumpets, basically the war sounds. Whereupon they came forth out of all the towns of Judea round about and closed them in. So these men are fleeing, and basically the Israelites that were round about in the towns came out and approached them. So now they were blocked in. Behind them is Judas and his army, and in front of them are the rest of the Israelites. They don't have anywhere to go. So that they, turning back upon them that pursued them. So once they saw shit, we're surrounded, they turned back and then ended up meeting Judas and his army. And as it says, were all slain with the sword, and not one of them was left. Afterward they took the spoils and the prey, and smote off Nicanor's head, and his right hand, which he stretched out so proudly, and brought them away, and hanged them up toward Jerusalem. For this cause the people rejoiced greatly, and they kept that day a day of great gladness. Moreover, they ordained to keep yearly this day, being the 13th of Adar. So to constantly, each year to remember this was the day the Lord judged this wicked ninja, for his blasphemous and reproachful ways against the Lord. Thus the land of Judah was in rest a little while. And that brings us to the end of the book of 1 Maccabees, the 7th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rakha Kodesh. And until next time, Shalom.